How's it going, my friend? Welcome back to another week here on Finding Direction. First and foremost, I just want to say how truly excited I am that you are here to join me for another week as we dive in to getting you more clarity on what you want to do with your life. This week, I'm sitting down with my buddy, Adam Carroll. And a little bit about Adam Carroll. He is an international recognized speaker and author. He is a 2-time TEDx speaker, where one of his TEDx actually went entirely viral. He got over 6 million views. And he's also the creator of the documentary film Broke, Busted, and Disgusted, which is all about student loan debt and really kind of this epidemic that's going on. And now he works with companies large and small on culture initiatives and engaging human capital. He's also the founder of the Shred Method, the host of the Build a Bigger Life podcast, and retreat leader within his community of life architects. All right, so as you can see, Adam is doing a ridiculous amount of truly incredible things in this world. And on this episode, we talk about a few things like why, when sometimes life throws you a curveball, you got to take a breath, and how that can massively change the trajectory of your life. Many of us have been thrown curveballs lately, so I think this will be massively impactful for many of you as you learn how to take that breath as you step into that next phase of your life. We also talk about how do you get a part of your life that you want to grow faster. All right, Adam dives into this in a really beautiful way. And we also talk about, for some of you that may be listening to this and you're in student loan debt or you got credit card debt, a few steps that you can do immediately, and a few resources Adam gives as well on how you can start destroying some of that debt immediately. All right, massively, massively powerful stuff this week on the episode. And if you haven't yet, please make sure that you go subscribe to this podcast. Go subscribe so that every single week we can bring you this podcast 2 times a week and help you get closer to building a life that truly lights up your soul. All right, so without that, we are going to dive into this week's episode, and here we go. Adam Carroll, welcome to the podcast, man. I'm excited to have you here.
Stu, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Absolutely. And so let's dive in with going back into your past. And I'm curious if you could just give the audience like a layout, like, what was life like for little Adam Carroll running around as a kid?
Oh, wow. So I was my dad was a salesman when I was really, really young, and he traveled a lot and got moved around a lot. So I was born in Des Moines, Iowa. We moved to California, we moved to Minneapolis, we moved back to Iowa. And that's where I planted myself from 4th grade, or they planted me, I should say, from 4th grade through high school. And I remember thinking that my folks were well off, and they laugh about that now and say, oh no, we struggled like everyone else did. And so I think I had the image or the impression of things being easy, which was probably a benefit to me. My dad was very much a manifester of abundance. And so he would talk about, one day I remember he handed me a Deepak Chopra book, and it was basically something about the wizard within or the way of the wizard, one of those books. And he said, you don't know this yet, but you're a wizard. And I'm conjuring up Harry Potter images,
Yeah.
And later on, I learned, the ability to just manifest whatever it is we want in life was given to us. And he was very, very much on that path with me. Wow. And I think I adopted that. I don't know when it actually hit me, but probably in my 20s, where I finally came to grips with the fact that, I'm actually creating the world that I'm in, and I need to be really intentional and clear about what I want.
Yeah. That's how old were you when he gave you that book? Do you remember?
Well, so later on in life, he left the sales gig and got into like organizational development and consulting and training. And my mom was in training. So conversations around the dinner table were things like 7 Habits and The Fifth Discipline by Peter Senge. And it was a really boring conversation for like a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
But it sunk in. And I think I was probably 13 or 14 when my dad started giving me these books.
Interesting. And so when they did like organizational development training, were they like going into companies and speaking and doing things like that?
They were. They were a
Wow.
little more
Full
W2.
circle.
Yeah, totally full circle. Though they were a little more W2 oriented. They were employees of companies.
Oh,
And I think at some level, Stu, I remember when I was a kid, my dad would be gone traveling and delivering programs for the company with whom he worked. And I remember thinking, I want to be home more than I'm away when I'm when I'm old enough to work. And for a period of time, and I'm sure we'll get into kind of my speaking career, but
yeah.
I was gone a lot. And like 2014 especially was a year where I was gone a ton. And I was going back through some old journals, and there was some post about I want to be home more than I'm away. And it hit me right between the eyes. And I was like, I have to change what I'm doing, change my business model somehow.
And so now, currently, would you say you're home more than away?
I am. I'm home. Matter of fact, 2020 probably like cemented
Changed everything.
right at home. I'm in my studio 80% of the time, probably and doing one thing or another, either creating content or training or delivering a speaking gig. But I love it. I feel like I've developed and designed the life that I always imagined. So it's been magical.
Yeah. And what a beautiful way to take on 2020. And like you said, like design the life you want. I think it really is interesting if we're very intentional about the life we want to create. Obviously, life always has speed bumps and things like that, but like you really can be intentional about creating the life. You just got to be committed to being intentional. Indeed.
And I think clarity, I've heard you talk about it on your show before, but clarity, knowing what you want, and some of the interviewees you've had, it seemed like they got really clear. And when they got really clear, then all manner of things happened to help them get where they wanted to go. 100%. And I think that's the biggest challenge, like the finding direction. And part of the reason I love your podcast is we're all trying to find our direction. We all are. And for some of us, it's very, very clear. And for others of us, it's not. And we've got to get to that clarity point somehow, in some way. Yeah.
Yeah. Clarity's power for sure. And so let's say then we dive back into your life. You're in your 20s now. You're going, holy crap, the wizard stuff is real. I can be intentional. I can manifest. What were some of the things you were in that moment like? I'm going to be intentional about this, or I'm going to manifest this. Like what were those things?
It probably started when I was in college. I worked for a company called Southwestern Publishing. And I don't know if you're familiar with this company, but they recruit about 4,000 college kids a summer to go sell books door to door. So I was a door-to-door sales guy for 2 summers. And I was selling these educational study guides. And we were knocking on like 200 doors a day, 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, just getting our teeth kicked in. And the thing about the company is that they were really, really well known for their training programs. And so when you went through a week of training before being launched onto the book field, they would give you books like The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. They would give you Think and Grow Rich. They would give you How to Win Friends, which I know is a popular favorite book of yours.
Totally.
So they would give us all these books. Life is Tremendous by Charlie Tremendous Jones. And we had to read the book every single morning and begin to commit some of the lessons to memory. And so I sold books and everyone was like, oh, wow, you're going to be great at this. But there was a mental game that you had to play doing that.
Yeah.
That was kind of like reminding yourself this was an opportunity, not an obligation, that you could go make this summer whatever you wanted, or it could suck, because it did suck. I mean, there were days where like it was raining in Southern California and it was a sucky day. I didn't want to do it anymore. And I got out of that job when I graduated, took a job with a sister company of theirs, selling suits and shirts and sport coats to upper level executives in their offices. So basically I was a clothier, and that too was a sales game, because you had to set appointments with people and get in front of them and sell them, at the time, very expensive clothing. And from my perspective. And every day, Stu, I would listen in the car to the likes of Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen and Les Brown and Zig and Tony Robbins. And I was just listening to these motivational messages to keep myself pumped up, because some of the guys listened to the radio during the day. And
Right.
a friend of mine was like, dude, that's just mental chewing gum. You got to put actually good stuff in your brain every day. So I was listening to these speakers, and one of them said, public speaking is one of the most noble professions because you get to change people's lives, you get to travel the world, and you get paid a lot of money to do it. And I was like, that's the trifecta. Those all three things are what I want. And from that point forward, I gained the clarity. And I remember very distinctly, I was like 26 years old. And I went, I want to speak. That's what I want to do for the rest of my life. I just want to present and speak and train people and make a difference, have impact. And for the next like 15 years, I went on this pilgrimage of figuring out how to do it and how to build a business doing it.
Had you, like when you had that moment of like light bulb, had you spoken before? Were you currently speaking, or were you more so just like one-on-one sales kind of things?
Yeah, it was more one-on-one sales. I knew that I had the chops to do it. Like I had I was the keynote speaker as a senior in high school. I had delivered a whole bunch of programs in college. I was a broadcasting major. So part of my shtick was I thought I was going to be in front of the camera anyway. Yeah. And then I realized that, newscasters and reporters make no money whatsoever starting out. And it's a 20 or 30 year career before you're making good money. And so I knew that I could do it, but I didn't know how to do it or what to do. And I just set about aligning myself with mentors who could guide me on that path. Yeah.
Yeah. I think one thing too that you say, and I can relate to this in a massive way, is I was introduced to network marketing. So it wasn't door to door, but it was very, similar kind of, grit that you had to develop in this process, because you get a lot of no's. And one of the biggest things that I learned and just helped me grow so much in a quick time was like turning your vehicle into a university on wheels, just like you said. And obviously if you're listening to this podcast right now, maybe you're listening to it in your car, but it's also asking yourself like, what books can I put instead of music? What, you know what I mean? Because it's like, music's great. Don't get me wrong. I love music, love a good vibe and all that. But it's also like, if you really do want to have a better quality of life, you have to like train yourself to listen. Like I remember when I used to listen to, I know you know Jim Rohn. I used to put him on in the car, and I would, after like 30 minutes, I'd have to put music on because I'd literally start falling asleep. And then I did it, you know what I mean? And then you do it long enough that you go, okay, now I can listen to this for the whole drive. But initially when you do it, you're like, it's just people talking, and you like, but if you really want to have a better quality of life, you learn these things, you build this muscle. And really what you're doing is you're making yourself more valuable to the marketplace, as Jim Rohn would say. And the more valuable you become to the world, by default, the more money that you're going to make.
Totally. His whole notion that formal education will make you a living and self-education will make you a fortune. That got drilled into me over and over and over again as I was listening to the content. And I'm like, there is an exponential stacking effect the more of those you listen to, in my opinion. So some people will say, I listened to Think and Grow Rich, didn't really do anything for me. And I always say to them, listen to it again, and then listen to it a third time and a fourth time. And by the sixth time, if you've also been taking in other ideas, things will just start to fall into place and click. And that's kind of what happened for me. I would wake up and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I just had this great idea. And it was because I'd listened to three things through the week, and they all, they were percolating in my subconscious. And then finally Friday morning, I wake up, I'm like, why have I not been doing this? I should be doing this.
Yeah. So then light bulb goes off. You go, oh my God, I'm going to speak. I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. I'm curious, if you could walk us through like step 1, 2, 3, because, I think we're all guilty in a sense of going, I got this thing. I want to do it. Light bulb.
Yeah.
It's few who then go do it. So like for you, what was light bulb goes off? I'm going to do this. What did, kind of the first few steps look like for you?
Yeah. I love telling this story, Stu, and I appreciate the question, because I went through a life coaching program and they called these moments that we all go through in our life where they call them life gates, where you go through the life gate and the trajectory of your life changes when you go through the life gate. And typically there is either a person or an event or an incident that happened that created this life gate moment. So I was on the phone with a good friend of mine. His name is Clint Taylor, and he lives in Austin, Texas. Brilliant guy. I worked with him selling books. We traveled Australia, New Zealand, and Fiji together after college. And he's been one of my, best friends and champions for a long time. And I called Clint one day and I just said, I just don't think measuring inseams is my gig, man. Like I can't do this every day and be excited about it. And he said, what do you want to do? And I said, I really think I need to be public speaking. And he said, and this is the LifeGate moment, he said, well, Anne, who used to work with us selling books, now works for this company out of Cincinnati, Ohio called Making It Count. And this is what they do. Let me reintroduce you guys. So he connects me with Anne. I have a phone call with Anne. Anne says, why don't you send a demo tape in? And if we like it, we'll invite you to Cincinnati to do this group audition, which basically they were hiring independent contract speakers for this company, which happened to be a division of monster.com, the job search company.
Yeah.
And so I send in the video. Anne says, we're interested. I get my ticket to Cincinnati and I go into the clothing company. And I just said to my boss, I'm going to this thing. It's this weekend. I need to leave early on Friday. I really am interested in it, but it's just going to be one or two events a month here or there. Nothing big. It's just a passion that I have. So he says, oh, that's totally cool. I support you in that, bud. Goes and tells his boss, who is the leader of the office. And they called me into the office and said, hey, if you're looking at other things, then you're done. And literally they walked me out that day and I was done. And so I go home to my wife and I was like, hey, I don't have a gig. And I'm newly married, Stu. Like I'm, 18 months in or something. And at this point, my wife is like, you're a screw up. And I'm just not sure I made the right decision,
Oh, geez.
And in the end, it all played out the way it was supposed to. I went to Cincinnati. I got hired on by these guys. I was doing independent contract work for a while and I kept forcing the issue and saying, put me to work, make me travel. I'm good with this. Like send me wherever you want.
Yeah. And
I quickly became an area manager for that company. And over the course of about a year and a half, I spoke to over 200,000 people, mostly high school kids between the age of 14 and 18. And I realized that if I can keep the attention of 14-year-olds, I could pretty much speak to anybody because it's the most apathetic group of human beings on the face of the earth.
Yeah.
And so that was the start of it. That kind of, allowed me to cut my teeth on the industry.
And that was with Making It Count. That they were sending you to the schools, basically.
Yep. They were sending me to the schools. It was myself and about 6 others were kind of the go-to if we were going to be sent into a rough area or a huge crowd. And it was just a great experience for me all the way around. 9/11 happened. I was on my way down to a school to deliver a program. And I thought to myself, there's no way that this company is going to continue in its current form. And I was right. About 60 days later, they called 30% of the workforce in and laid everybody off. And I was like, okay, I need to figure out a different route. But I still want to speak because I had that bug. Yeah. And for the next 2 years, I was working really hard to figure out how to build a business on my own doing that work.
Gotcha. So you kind of went from being the inseam guy to obviously that, life happens one day. And I think like such a beautiful lesson from that too, is it's like, we all have things that happen in our life. Like for you you tell the story now, but I'm sure in that moment, it was like, holy shit. You know what I mean? It was like,
yes.
Just got married, I got my wife, if we're going to have kids and I got to provide for that one day. And I can't even imagine, but you took it as something that was just a beautiful sign that pointed you to the direction that you're supposed to go. And I think it's like sometimes in life, these things happen and we have to, rather than react, we have to take a moment, sit, breathe, respond, and go, what could the lesson be from this? What could the positive seed be that I'm supposed to get from this? Like, did I actually not really like that? Like what was it? A day, 2 days before you said you didn't want to be the inseam guy and the world gave you your answer. The universe gave you your answer. And it's like, sometimes when these things happen to us in life that we quote unquote don't want or are not ideal, we really have to like intentionally again, take a moment and say like, okay, breathe. I'm not going to die. what positive things could come from this? And then if we can use that to move our life in a forward direction, it's like your life's going to start to look so different. So I love that, and kudos to you on doing it like a champion and sharing that with us.
Well, thank you. I'm sure that I had panic moments in the midst of it, but I also think it's probably worth noting too, Stu, that I think your tribe are probably some years into their career, but maybe trying to figure out where they're at and where they're going. There is something that we all go through, and it's called your turbulent 20s. And the turbulent 20s is just like figuring out, is this for me? Is this not for me? And to your point about seeing the good in what could be initially perceived as bad, and realizing that some of those are gifts from the universe. Yeah. Because I know that that me getting fired from Tom James, the clothing company, that was a blessing in disguise. It was really hard. I know that getting hired on it, making it count, was blessing. As an independent contractor, I had a lot to learn. And then like fighting for it and saying, you got to hire me. I want this gig, and put me out there, and ended up making more money than I would have at Tom James. All of those were kind of lessons learned along the way, but it's not without difficulty. The example, the analogy that I give to folks sometimes is, if you're ever, I went on this long car ride. It was a cross country road trip. And actually it was with my friend Clint, who I referred to before. And we had a massive accident on day 2 of the trip. Massive, like a rollover Jeep accident, end over end 4 times in the middle of Nebraska, of all places.
Jesus.
And I remember him saying, it doesn't change where we're going. The vision doesn't change. How we go about it changes, but the vision doesn't change. And I think that's true for most people. It's like, oh gosh, this bad thing happened, or this bad thing happened. It doesn't change the vision. It just changes how we go about the vision. And we have to remember that, because some people are like, oh, I was never destined to be an actor or be a singer or be a whatever. It's like, no, you just got to change the way you go about doing it.
I freaking love that. What a powerful takeaway from that almost, fatal accident. And I think one thing too, and I feel like this probably played a part in your, whether it was, now starting to form your own business. Let's say we jump forward, this company after 9/11 shuts down. It's like, I think there's just such an importance in always training your mind, so that when the moment comes where you need the training to kick in, you've trained for that moment. Like, I'm sure when you were laid off, and they said, if you're looking at other stuff, you're done. All that training that you had done kicked in. When the company went down, you got to start my own business. The training kicked in. Like, I know for me, one of the biggest places training my mind really kicked in my life is when I was 24. I was diagnosed with testicular cancer, and it was like I was able to get through that process and become healthy today, and get through the process relatively easily, because I had trained my mind so much that when it came, it was like, all right, what, sit, breathe. What else could this mean? You know what I mean? And then let's go in a forward direction with this. And it's like, it's just so important to always be working on yourself,
Yes. And you're right. It is, these are like arrows in your quiver, right? Yeah. So you had tons of arrows in your quiver when that happened to you.
Yeah.
And I think that's, of all the advice that I've ever been given, someone once said when I first started working, take a job for what you can learn, not for what you can earn. And I've told so many people that, young, college graduates and young professionals, because there is something about the allure of the paycheck.
Yeah.
But at some point, you're going to make more and more money the more you learn, and you can be surrounded by really, really quality, talented, intelligent people and not make as much in a job and still come out better. Yeah. And so yeah, I have attempted to do that throughout my career, and constantly put more arrows in the quiver.
Yeah. What can you learn, not what can you earn? I hope everybody heard that. Powerful. So let's back into the story. So, 9/11 happens, you go, they're probably going to shut down. A few months later, they shut down, and all of a sudden Adam faces another one of these decisions where he goes, holy crap, life's thrown another curveball. Yeah. How did you proceed into that next phase of your life?
So it was interesting. We were living in Denver, Colorado at the time, my wife and I. We had bought a condo.
Nice.
We were young. I mean, we got married at 24. We were probably 26 at the time.
Huh.
And but when we got married, we agreed that we were going to live life differently certainly than our parents did, but live life differently than most people would. And it was based on this notion that I'm sure I got from Jim Rohn or somebody else. But it was basically, if you do for 2 years what most people won't do, you can do for the rest of your life what most people can't do.
Yeah.
And we said, well, what if we just lived on one income for 2 years, blast away all of our debt, and lived debt-free as much as humanly possible? And so from 24 to 2060, we lived on my wife's income. She was my sugar mom at the time. It was a pretty good deal.
Nice.
And my income went to blast away all of our debt. So within 24 months, we had paid off like $55,000 in student loans, car loans, credit cards, and consumer debt. And I remember asking her when we first got married, how much do you need in savings to feel safe and secure? And she was like, $20,000. And I thought she'd hit the Listerine too hard that morning because I'd never seen that amount of money before. And yet 6-8 months later, after we had paid off our debt, we had 20 grand sitting in a money market account. And it was like, oh, now we're good to do whatever. Well, about 4 months after that, 9/11 happened and I lost my job. And she's like, it's cool. We've been living on one income anyway. We can continue doing this. You figure out what you want to do and where you want to go. Let's go travel Colorado for the next 2 weeks because she had some time off. And during those travels, we realized maybe actually what we want to do is sell the place, move back to Iowa and start a family because it's time. Wow. And so we did. We moved back to Iowa. And in the midst of doing that, I ended up aligning myself with a mentor there. He was teaching me how to get speaking gigs. And it was kind of about a 2 or 3 month process, but we had plenty of cash reserves, so it wasn't stressful. Yeah. And this guy, he saw me present and he goes, hey man, you're $1,000 speaker right now. And for me, that was validation that like I can go out and I can charge $1,000 for what I do. And I was only making $3,000 or $3,500 a month anyway, previously. Right. So can I go get 3.5 gigs a month? You bet I can. So I figured out, how do I go replace my income by doing speaking gigs and make more per hour than some people make in a month? And that just became my game. Like, how do I make more and more per hour than some people make in a month?
I love that. That is so cool. And so, if we continue your story, I mean, you didn't just, it almost sounds like you're like, okay, I did this, got 3.5 gigs a month, but it's like you went on to do this for 10, 15 years. I mean, some years doing 60, 70 speeches a year. Yeah. So walk us through the process of like, how do you go from, saying I'm going to do this 3-4 gigs to all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm on a plane every 2 weeks, I would imagine, every week, every week, couple days. Week. Yeah. So how did you go from doing a little bit to saying and really maximizing this? Yeah.
This business is interesting because the theory that I was living by was the more you speak, the more you speak. If you're really good at what you do, as soon as you get in front of a microphone, people are like, damn, that was good. Or I learned 5 things out of it. I love it when I see people like turn to their notepad and they're jotting notes down. I'm like, okay, I'm connecting.
Yeah, totally.
And the more you speak, the more you speak. I was doing everything I could locally. I was doing chambers and rotaries and Kiwanis clubs and Lions clubs and high school events and college events. And I really found a niche in community college and college events. Yeah. And I realized that there was some traction I was getting there. And the story that I most loved to tell and probably resonated with the audience was my money story. I made my message because I was an idiot in college. I was a rich college kid and a broke professional, And so I started telling that story, and the colleges were like, hey, this is really good. And we want to do more of this. And then I started, this is kind of a funny story. My former business partner and I had said, hey, we need to go do the National Association of Campus Activities called NACA. Right, and NACA is where all these colleges converge and they all buy speakers and entertainers and hypnotists and bands and musicians and whatnot. So we go to this NACA event and we called it the Hojo to Hilton tour because we were staying in the Howard Johnson's up the street and the event was at the Hilton. but the Hilton was too expensive for us to stay in.
Yeah.
And so we do the event, and it was clear that people were just there to have fun and, knock around. They weren't really hiring speakers like us. And I got back from that event. We had dropped $3,000 or something to go. And I was like, you know what? I am never paying to market myself again. My greatest marketing is me getting up on stage and doing my thing well. And it's kind of that whole idea of be so good they can't ignore you.
Yeah.
And so I started thinking, well, what groups would I need to be in front of that would lead to multiple engagements? And I realized that there were business fraternities, marketing fraternities, social fraternities, service fraternities that I could get in front of and do their regional and national events. And there would be hundreds, sometimes thousands of college students there who would be like, that was so awesome. I want to bring you to school. And I crafted a really amazing pitch book that I would either give them physically or they would download a PDF document version of it. And then I would teach them exactly how to go into their dean or their campus activity department and inviting me in. And it just, Stu, I realized that I could keep scaling up the amount of money that I was charging based on the quality of the marketing materials and having another book and then doing the documentary and all that stuff just made me more and more valuable.
Love that. That is so cool. And so one thing I would be curious is, you touched on this earlier, but you get to the point where you are on a plane every week. You have kids at that point, right? I'm assuming. So, you're not spending as much time with the family. You're speaking. It's like you're on the road a lot. You're not with your family as much as you sound like you wanted to. And I want to go back to this moment you mentioned earlier where you were going through your journal and all of a sudden you read, I want to be home more than I'm on the road.
Yes.
And when this happened to you, how did you start to go through the shift of saying, okay, I have so much momentum in this one area of my life. I can keep doing this. I can keep doing it really good. I can keep growing it, but it's at the sacrifice of some of the other things that are really important to me in life. Because I think sometimes as we go through life, we have something that works for us and we know if we keep doing it, it's going to work more. But there is this other almost like silent part sometimes that goes, but it's going to impact my relationship. I'm not going to be able to do this thing that I really want to do. Like, how did you not just say, okay, this is something that I want, but you easier said than done to say, I'm going to put all this stuff that's working really well to the side and say like, if I have to say no to some of these things, whether it's things that create fulfillment for me, things that create income for me, things that, I love doing, I'm going to put that on the side because I know I need to make a change. Like, how did you, go through that process?
Jack Canfield, I think it was in the Success Principles. He had articulated this idea that where attention goes, energy flows and results show. And it may be a Tony Robbins thing. I don't remember exactly who coined it first, but I started thinking through this idea of like, if I'm putting my energy and attention into travel and doing gigs that are a long ways away, I'll continue getting them. And I think there was this mental shift that I had, Stu, where I had perceived that my value in the market was, call it somewhere between $3,500 and $7,500 to go do a gig.
Nice.
And there was one event, I remember I'd gotten paid $3,500. It was probably one of my first $3,500 gigs. And I remember thinking, I've made it. Like this is what everyone aspires to. I've made it. And I was in Rhode Island. It was spitting cold, like one of those like hard rains, almost turning to ice. And the freaking airport I was at didn't have a jet bridge. You had to walk outside to get on the airplane. And it's spitting down. It's like 6:30 in the morning. I'm freezing cold. I didn't get a ton of sleep because I'd been out with students the night before. They're always like, come hang with us. And then they're like, you're the cool old guy who will come hang with us. And so I'm getting on the plane. I was like 30 probably at the time, 32.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking, this isn't worth it. I don't know if this is worth it. I'm away from my kids. I'm not sleeping with my wife tonight or last night. I'm flying home today, but I'm going to leave in 2 days. So I'm going to get 48 hours maybe at home. And I really just started questioning, is this worth it? And what that did was it like forced me through this keyhole of determining what is the number that will make me feel good about leaving my family if there is one. And I have to be okay saying no if they can't hit that number. And know that whatever is local will fill in the gap for that, because I'd rather be home than be on the road.
Yeah.
And interestingly, and what has happened in my life is that as soon as my attention shifts and the energy shifts, results start pouring in. So the, all of the gigs that were like, oh, well, we have 2,500. And I'm like, sorry, I just don't, I won't leave the house for that unless there's 3 gigs stacked up back to back to back that I can do over a period of 2 days or 3 days. And, the days that I could do that, it was great. And I tell my wife, hey, I apologize. I'm leaving, on this date, I'm going to be gone for 2 days, but here is the take on those 2 days. And she'd be like, oh, that's cool. Versus like, well, how much are you getting on this one? Yeah. And I don't want it to be all about money, because it really isn't, with the exception of we were on this massive debt payoff push as well to get our house paid off, and know that on the backside of that was like, okay, now it's freedom and flexibility, and it doesn't matter how many or how few days there are on the books. It's all gravy.
Yeah. I think it's so, man, it's so real where you put, like, where energy go, or where, say it one more time.
Where attention goes, energy flows, and results show.
Yeah. And it's like so true. It's like when you put energy into something, ultimately results come in that area. And if you want to shift, you got to shift your focus. Yeah. I mean, I'm, in my own life, I have very relevant things where are going through my head, where it's like some things where it's like, okay, am I putting energy into this or that? And it's so true that it's like, not only when you put energy into something, do more, your energy goes there, results come, but it's like, once you put more energy and focus into that, like, I don't want to say like magical things happen or something, but it's like wizardly powers come in, where it's like all of a sudden this thing out of left field comes in, and it's because it's like almost the universe rewarding you, saying, okay, you made this decision, and because you made this decision, we're going to support you.
Totally.
It's a beautiful thing.
I think there's three books I would throw out there too that helped get me here.
Love it.
One is a book called Outwitting the Devil.
I got it right here.
Yeah. And it was, the whole backstory of that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Written in 1937 or 38, not published till 2011. I read that book and I was like, oh man, I have been a drifter through some of my life. And in the book, he talks about there are drifters and there are non-drifters. And the drifters are easily blown off course by the next bright, shiny object and all the things. And I was actually just interviewing Chandler Bolt on my podcast, who runs self-publishing school.
Yeah.
And Chandler was saying, focus, man, it's follow one course until successful. And as entrepreneurs, we're constantly asked, like, what's new? What's new? What's happening? What are you into? What's the next thing? And in reality, for many of us, it's like, there is no next. This is the thing. This is it. This is what we're doing. So the book, Drifting, Non-Drifting, it sort of tied into Think and Grow Rich, which was all about having definiteness of purpose.
Yeah.
That was super important. And then a book that my dad actually referred to me called A Happy Pocket Full of Money by David Cameron Giacondi. And this book is less about money and more about quantum physics than anything else. But in the book, he basically said, listen, when your belief is strong enough, then all manner of unforeseen things happen in the universe. But for many people, their belief isn't strong enough. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, if you had some goal, Stu, and the belief level is a 6, the universe is like, well, Stu kind of believes in it, but he doesn't totally believe in it. But if it's a 10 and we can ratchet it up to a 10, man, things take off. And so the example I give is when I was doing the documentary project, we were crowdfunding the documentary. And, our goal was $65,000 in a 45-day time frame. And nearly everyone I encountered would ask me, well, what are you going to do if you don't hit the goal? And I would respond with, it's not even in my purview. Like I can't even fathom not hitting the goal. Disbelief doesn't even enter my psyche on that. And it worked, it worked. Yeah. I knew that if you get to 88% funded, you'd get to 100% funded. And so I just kept being like, got to get to 88. We'll get there. And we worked really hard, diligently, but belief was behind it.
Yeah. Love that. So one question I would have for you before we get into the last, real 1-2 questions
Yeah.
is obviously you've toured a lot, made a documentary around this whole thing, student loan debt. I think today we're close to like $2 trillion in student loan debt. I mean, it's crazy. Even like listening to some of I was listening to one of the podcasts you did in 2014, and it was like, I was just getting fired up because it's like, man, like it is crazy how so many people in this world have debt. And, obviously some people it's student loan debt, some people it's credit cards, but it's like, we almost live in a society where, especially in school, it's so ridiculously easy to get into ridiculous amounts of debt. And so what I would be curious, and I know we could, spend a whole nother 30, 40 minutes on this alone. But like in short, let's say there's someone listening to this and they're going, man, I have $30,000, $20,000 in student loan debt, credit card debt or whatever. Like, what are just first few things they can do to like, just start moving in the direction to get out of this? Because I don't have any student loan debt, thankfully. I'm extremely grateful for that. But I got to imagine being $30,000 in student loan debt or however much, like ridiculously overwhelming. So like, what are a few steps so that we can get them clarity on how they can get out of it?
So there's a couple things I would bring up on this point, Stu. One is, $30,000. I think the average right now is about 44,000. That's the average that borrowers have when they come out. And a $440,000 student loan balance carries with it about a $500 a month minimum payment for 10 years. And what happens is the Department of Education will graciously grant you 20 years or longer to pay it back. So now the payment's $250 or $280. And so one of the things that we have to remember when you're indebted to the student loan system, every dollar that you borrow, you will pay back two if you let it go a long time. So congratulations, if you had 40 grand in debt and you do what they tell you to do, which is like, just make the minimum payments, you'll pay back $80,000. And so this for me, it was the light bulb moment of, I don't want to play the banker's game. We already don't own enough of our income, right? Like the whole taxation system and everything else is just all these little, bits out of our pocket. So when I tell people, hey, the reality is you don't own as much of your income as you think you do. Yeah. Because if you calculate how much interest you're paying and the taxes you're paying, most people on average probably take home about 30% of their actual income to use in the way they want to use it. And I kept thinking, well, how do I get to 100%? Number one, you got to pay off all your debt, which isn't always easy. But for student loans, in answer to your question, the number one thing you got to do is don't focus on the big number, the 30 or 40 or 60 or 80,000. Focus on the one debt that you can knock out really quickly. Because most people take out a loan every single semester. So if you're in school for 4 years, you got 8 loans. If you took out a couple of emergency ones, you might have 10 or 12. What I would recommend people do is go look at your listing of all the loans and go after one of them like a laser beam. And then have the satisfaction and gratification of paying that off. Yeah. And then move on to the next one, and then move on to the next one. The problem for many people is psychologically, we look at this big number, and I get it, like 80, 100,000 in student loan debt, forget it. Crazy. I met one of the young ladies in our documentary had $298,000 in student loans. And she was a doctor of veterinary medicine. Her payment every month, Stu, was $1,200 a month, and it did not cover the interest expense that was accruing on the debt. So that kind of number, like, how do you do that, right?
Yeah, fathom.
And so I spent years and years trying to find and craft the way to do it. There's a website called The Shred Method, where I teach people how to shred their debt, shred student loans, shred mortgages. And the Shred Method uses a mathematical formula, which basically leverages simple interest against compound interest. So we borrow in short bursts and we lever it against big long-term compound interest debt. The ideal way to do that is through a home equity line of credit. So if you own your home, most people can be out of their mortgage in 3 to 5 years. Most people could be out of a student loan in 3 to 5 years, depending on your income, so long as you have this simple interest vehicle you can leverage to knock it out.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah, I have a friend, and I don't know if a lot of people do this or not, but I had a friend who was, I think he was 120,000 in student loan debt. Um, and he paid a company to basically, I don't know if they technically sued the school or something, but he paid some company to like research this, and eventually they ended up like winning the case, and he
Yes.
had to pay back, I think, 30 of the 120,000. And I think the like case that they were making is like, you loaned a 20-year-old kid $120,000 by signing in three places. Like, you know what I mean? And so I don't know if people do that a lot or if that's like also a thing to encourage, but I mean, he got out of tens of thousands of student loan debt because he paid someone to like fight the system for him, which is pretty interesting.
It is interesting. And there's more and more cases like that. In fact, you could look up student loan lawyer. There's a couple of guys, one guy's on the West Coast, another one on the East Coast. And that's all they do is they fight student loan cases.
Good for them.
And I've heard of a number of people that will get either loans forgiven. In some cases, it's paperwork issues, like the paperwork wasn't filed correctly or wasn't transferred correctly from one servicer to another. And you can, not opt out, but you can challenge the viability of those loans. I will say this, I don't want to give people tons of false hope. It's a long shot. And some of them you have to be diligent on, like so disciplined in your email correspondence, but it's possible.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hopefully something that, I don't know, they figure out soon, because it's crazy. Again, we could be here for another 40, 50 minutes talking just about that. But Adam, man, it's been an absolute joy to go through your story. I love the kind of curves, turns. I love all of your like personal development philosophies that trickle throughout all of this. I'm a big, obviously, fan of personal development. And so I'm curious if people want to get a hold of you, see what you're up to, what you're doing in today's world, where's the best place that they can find you?
Yeah, I appreciate the ask. It's super easy. If you want more information on Adam Carroll, go to adamcarroll with 2 R's and 2 L's .info. adamcarroll.info is my site, and all the stuff is there. So you can watch the documentary from there. My TED Talk, I did a TED Talk in London that went viral. That's on the site. And then all the other stuff I have going on, like Shred and speaking. So yeah, I'd love to get visitors to the site and check out all the stuff there is to share.
Awesome. And so last question I have for you, question we ask every single guest, because we're about helping people find direction, but do it through action, is what would you say is one thing someone listening to this can do in the next 24 to 48 hours to start finding direction in their life?
One of the things that I would recommend, Stu, is what in your life do you always go back to? And the reason that I say that is I knew that I felt alive when I would get up and do a program. If I was up presenting, I always felt like I was in my body, in the right place, at the right time, super present. And I think every one of us has something like that. And if you're not sure what it is, I heard a great question, which was, what did you do as a kid that when you did it, time stood still? And if there is some correlation between what you did as a kid where time stood still and what you are supposed to be doing in life, there's some correlation there. It's just your goal to find out what that is. But really ask yourself, what have you done in your life where it really felt congruent and on purpose and intentional, and do more of that. Because every time I veer off the course, I always get drawn back to speaking. And I know that at some point, it doesn't matter how I use my voice, I just have to use my voice. And so even doing podcasts like this is a blast. Writing for me fits that bill. Writing books, all those things. It just, for me, it's how do I use my voice? And I need to be doing that more often.
Love it. Love it. Well, Adam, again, thank you so much for being here, man. Loads of value. I know people are going to get so much from this, and truly a joy to have you on the show. So again, thanks so much for being here.
Stu, great to be on your show, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.